for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's see, we have no minutes to approve tonight, so the next item is acceptance of the agenda as presented. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Carl. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. And I'm pleased to welcome our Parks and Recreation Committee, which is the Route 17 Recreational Park, and the chairman, Mr. Brian McCarthy, is here, and Ralph Zampano, who's chairman of our Parks and Recreation Commission, and our Parks and Recreation Director, Sean Dwyer, is here. So we're going to turn it over to you, and I want to thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Just an update, I think it was maybe September when we last...
You may want to take a mic.
Okay.
Is that okay, Noah? Can you? Okay. That way the camera can pick you up, Brian. Do you mind, Ryan?
Terrible. If you have something to say, Ryan, I'll surely get it.
Is that picking up?
I think we last briefed you in September on our progress.
7:30 in the Portland Library, we closing in 30 minutes.
Thank you very much. And so I'm sure I'll be done by then. Since then, this is the purpose of presentation. Can I just give you an update? So since that time, we had a public forum in early October, and also we had a survey. It was kind of based on a web-based survey that was linked to the town website. And so between, I think we had over 400 responses to the web survey and two other informal paper surveys that we had over the summer. We had over 500 responses to that. And right now, the committee's in the process of digesting the results of all those surveys, as well as the feedback that we got from the forum. And I think we had probably upwards of 75 people plus attend the forum back in October at the high school. So we feel that we've gotten a lot of feedback. Obviously, people who are very passionate about the project, one way or the other, are ones who express their opinions, scientific survey, but the results we have from the web survey are that over 90% of the people said they would support the project as it was presented. Some of the concerns that we had about the project, expressed primarily by people in the neighborhood, were proximity to the neighborhood, security issues, does the town have a commitment to maintain it, how will it be controlled, in all hours, those kinds of issues. And the committee is addressing those things. One of the other issues that we looked at was what other type of programming would we look at the park. And overall, I think the public supported the programming that we're presenting, the mix of recreational facilities, formal recreational facilities, and passive recreational facilities. The one thing that was expressed, there was a lot of support expressed for was a pool, but the committee at this time feels like this is not the right spot for a pool. There's no public sanitary service here, and just because of the layout of the site and everything else, we don't feel that it best meets the needs of this facility. But some other time, the overall commission of the town feels like they need to support the pool. They want to build something somewhere else that's there, but that was kind of if there was anything that was asked for that we're not providing for this plan, that would be it. And so where we are right now is that we're going through some of the issues in this past month's meeting and next month's meeting, and going through a lot of the issues that were raised and giving some direction to our design engineer to incorporate some things into the plan. So I would anticipate by sometime in February or so that we'd be kind of ready to come back with a revised layout. I think that kind of the programming that we have right now in terms of baseball, soccer field, basketball, splash pad, passive recreation, some other open space is kind of the right mix. Whether it meets this exact layout or not is there. So one other thing that board to get that in motion. And that was certainly something that we thought about as we were looking at the plans, and that was certainly expressed by some neighbors to the project that they would not want to see their neighborhood being used as a cut-through to the park or parking for access to the park. And, I don't think we heard any opposition to that concept from anyone within the neighborhood. I think they feel right now it's kind of a high-speed cut-through for access to Barclay Street. So if you carry that forward, I don't think you get a lot of opposition in terms of making the Street the cul-de-sac. So with that, that's kind of where we are right now in terms of our status. I'd be welcome to take any questions.
Thank you, Brian. Questions from the board? I appreciate the update. I think you had agreed to come on a frequent basis, and we appreciate that. It keeps us up to date, because not all the selectmen are able to go to all of the meetings, and I think this is such an important project that it's good to have updates.
Actually, I do have one question.
Mark?
I know that one of the concerns from the neighbors is noise and traffic, two of the concerns. So will the commission be considering ways to abate those concerns?
Yes, certainly conceptually right now, as you can see on the plan, there's some type of a buffer here. We've given direction to our the design engineer to look at options for increasing the size of that buffer. And in terms of the traffic, certainly closing Strickland Street is a big piece of any kind of traffic mitigation that would affect the neighbors there. I think having the town committed to making Strickland Street a cul-de-sac as part of that, as part of the process, would also enable us to go with confidence to the DOT as we discuss any issues related to the entrance of Route 17, knowing that we have that commitment from the town that would be part of the project would be helpful in discussions with DOT.
Has that plan been discussed with the residents of Strickland Street?
In the public forum, we certainly discussed that, put that out there, and there were some people that expressed that would be, certainly something that would be needed, that they would not get behind the project, would not accept the project.
Do they live on Strickland Street?
There was one person who lived on Strickland
Yeah.
Street that said that, yes. So, all along, it's been our plan to, once we get a little bit more definitive plans, to go out and meet with the neighbors one-on-one or in small groups to talk to them about their issues and their concerns.
Oh, that's great.
I think overall, the meeting on that we had in October, the public forum was very positive. We listened to their concerns, and I think we're trying to address them.
That's good.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you for serving on the committee and serving as chairman, Brian.
You're welcome.
And thank you. Sean and Ralph. Did you have anything you wanted to add while you're here?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I was wondering about the voting restriction is that, what's critical about that?
This is Ralph Zampano. Ralph, we can't hear you if you want to use a microphone.
Well, Ralph, the point is that the public record is
Yeah, I know.
on the tape, so they...
I'll talk louder now.
So, but he won't be, the tape won't hear you. That's why you need the mic, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The thing that was being discussed, and particularly about Strickland, is that the design engineer said that is extremely critical, how they lay things out. So, if there was any bottleneck or any concerns that would not go forward, they want to know it sooner rather than later, because that's ultimately going to drive out this slight redesign we would expect to see with what we have as a plan right now.
That's a good point. So maybe the selectmen can take a ride out there. Once again, I know you are familiar with the road. I've been out
Sure.
there. But I think it would be important for you to revisit. And if you have concerns, to please bring them forward at our next
I
meeting.
think the opinion of the residents who live on Strickland Street would be most important. So I'd like to hear from them.
Yeah, and I think, we realize that is critical. We just don't know the logistics of, even if we have their backing, what kind of, process or procedure.
Right. Well, it's a change to a road,
Right.
so it would have to be by the Board of Selectmen, have to be engineered, and would have to be studied, certainly, which is part of your part of your job but not your entire job, because it would be more a town engineer and a town project as opposed to the project. The Strickland Street making into a cul-de-sac or a no exit, no entrance can occur before the project proceeds, depending on what the selectmen want to do and how the project is funded going forward.
I'd like to help the project, but I still would like to have input from the people that it will affect the most.
Would you want us to send them each a letter?
I don't care how it's done.
We had sent all of the residents, or I didn't, the Parks and Rec Commission had sent each resident in the area a letter for the public hearing.
I don't know how many people live on that street, but it's not very many.
Too many, Mark, no. So we can do
And I
that.
think whatever the process would be, hearing from them and also hearing from your public safety officials to see if there's any issues at all related to
Yeah.
closing that off and so on, so whatever the process needs to be, that the town needs to go through to consider that. The eventual timing of making that happen, I think, would make sense to coincide with whenever you go forward with the development part. But we just want to make sure that we get the ball
Sure.
rolling on
Sure.
that.
There's a lot of engineering reasons for this as well, in addition to some of the reasons that were talked about earlier.
My sense would be after talking with some of the
residents that even if the park wasn't built, that they would be happy with making it a cul-de-sac. So.
We can have a public hearing and invite the residents and everyone else as well. Thank you again. Any other questions or comments? Fred, I didn't see you. Okay. Thank you again, very much. The next is public comment. The microphone is yours. Benzer.
How are you?
Fine, thank you.
I'd like to thank everybody for whoever voted to create this, I don't know if this might work.
Noah, is the sound okay? Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Noah. I'd like to thank any selectman that voted on creating this fixed real estate property assessment. I'm sure you guys are doing this right in. I think we were the first to apply for it, for the call shop. And I want to start by thanking you guys for creating it so we could then apply for it. My only thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm not sure if you'll allow me to talk when you're discussing it, or if not, that's why I'm here on the public comment. One of my, I guess my biggest and only concern at this point is the value is being picked now by the assessor who comes up with the value for the property. And all properties, when there's a change in assessment, you're allowed an appeal process if you don't agree with it, you can hire your own appraisal and have it done, and there's, the town doesn't necessarily accept that, there's back and forth part of it. It has to be all of our board. I just want to make sure that the resolution that's being voted on tonight wouldn't in any way void my rights of due process as far as appealing the value. There's a, and I'll be quite frank with you, there's a slight discrepancy from what the old assessor and I concluded my value would be, and the new assessor and I. We're not far off, and we're just been a pleasure to deal with. But having said all that, I would just ask that if you did vote on it tonight, that you add an amendment, and if you read the resolution, there's actually a clause that says it can be agreed, as long as both parties agree, it can then be altered. But the way I see it, what you're voting on tonight is not based on the value. What you're voting on tonight is whether I meet criteria or not to get this rate in taxes. And I would greatly appreciate it. And just so you guys know, the town still is going to have a net, quite a bit of a net increase from the property, so it's not a loss to the residents. It's actually an increase. And we got rid of a non-conforming house and we created I think, a very good looking building, and we're all moving in the right
Yes, I would
direction.
agree.
So the policy, I think, is wonderful. Having said that, I want to make sure that, and I have no problem with if we move forward with it tonight, as long as you then are giving, you believe Susan will have the final say and have the final authorization. I just want to make sure that it can then be based upon whatever the outcome is from due process. I'm not asking for anything to be changed or any different. it's not a big gap. Rich and I are close, but having said that, we did a budget from day one, and we did an analysis from day one what the building was going to be worth on our end, and there is a discrepancy from what the town says it may be worth now and what we have paperwork to back up. So I just want to make sure if you do vote on it tonight, that you just add a caveat that the numbers will be based on the outcome of the situation, not on any generic numbers that are created in front of you today, because obviously there's due process and appeal period, which I'm entitled to make sure what the numbers are. And we're not fully aware of what those numbers are until the process is completed. I just want to make sure. You guys have any questions on that? What's the next one?
Is there a difference between what the current appraiser and the former appraiser valued the property to be?
To date, it's never been appraised. Rich has somebody coming in to give me advice tomorrow. I don't want to misspeak his words.
Who's Rich?
Richard, our assessor. He does have somebody coming in. He told me tomorrow. I'm not sure if it's a formal appraisal or if it's just some advice on how to make sure the numbers accurate kind of thing.
Well, the assessor wouldn't do an appraisal.
Correct. He has somebody from a reval company, I believe is how he phrased it. I don't want to use words there.
Yeah, it's pretty common for the assessor to speak with the revaluation company.
And I'll be honest with you, it's difficult to look around Portland, and I want to start by saying, in no way just bragging. It's very difficult to come up with the value of a new commercial building in Route 66 when there are very few. And especially, this size, this style, vinyl sided, metal roof, it's nothing, it's no Taj Mahal, but I'm proud to have done it. Having said that, it is difficult for the assessor to come up with a value when you don't have it. So then they go by a computer scale, and the bottom line is the numbers that are costing to build and what Rich has it at are very, very different. And I allowed him to take all my numbers and through the audit process, and there's no secrets. So I just want to make sure that if we do vote and move forward, I want to make sure that due process, the end number will be whatever the end number is, not what you're voting, not what you see in front of you tonight. Because the due process hasn't happened yet.
We'll talk about more about this at the time of the
Right.
agenda, and if you can stay, that would be helpful.
That'd be great, and I'd love to be invited in if you have any questions.
Thank you. Any other public comment? We have some old business in terms of some policies that we discussed previously. Accommodations for qualified individuals with disabilities policy, cell phone policy, drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, social media policy, and workplace monitoring policy. These are new policies that we've discussed. We did have our labor attorney look at these, and we felt that these are policies that can be adopted and certainly can always be changed should we need to at any time. I don't know if the board is ready for adoption of these policies for the town.
Can I just have a moment?
Yes.
The last time this came up, we had comments about some suggestions or concerns. Were those incorporated?
Well, I know that one was a weapons-free. Under drug and alcohol, I'd made a note about weapons-free, and that is, I think, should be a separate policy, which I don't have. But we did talk about weapons. I think we talked a little bit about whether or not, I think Brian might have had some comments about phones. Yep.
I had some concerns about privacy with the cameras, but
Right.
it does not look like those were incorporated.
No, I don't think they were.
Could we look at these and
Absolutely.
vote on them at the next meeting?
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you.
I have one comment too, I'm just looking at the cell phone. And it seems to me that not 100% sure, but the law here, what we're suggesting is that or stating is that employees shouldn't use a cell phone when driving. Well, that's actually current law anyway, so I don't, it's kind of redundant. But then it goes on and says that regardless of circumstances, you have to pull over and then place the call. I believe the law announced may say that you also have to turn the vehicle off if you're going to do that.
Really?
I think so. So maybe somebody should look at that too.
I don't think so, Fred, because the law, to the best of my knowledge, doesn't preclude the use of Bluetooth, hands-free. And certainly the car is operational when then.
Yeah, I may be wrong. I just, just trying to think that.
Sure, we'll look that up. Those are new policies. We don't have to adopt them. I think that the intent of them is good, particularly the drug and alcohol-free workplace policy, which is a clear statement that we must not have any drugs and alcohol in the workplace. The others, we don't have to adopt them. Certainly, we don't have to adopt anything, but I think we have found, and I know that the fire department has also reviewed their own policies, and they precipitated some thought on this.
I'm sure they're good, but if we could just look at them. at the
Sure.
next meeting.
Susan, can I ask you, as it relates to cell phone policy,
Yes.
what do the police do? As it
In
relates to
terms of-
as it relates-
Whatever they want.
As it
Oh,
relates.
well, Jeff had to get that one down.
I had one of that.
Your
I see
question, Brian?
police, not in Portland necessarily, but they seem to use phones a lot.
They're
And they
allowed,
seem
they're
to-
exempt. They're exempt in the law
Yeah, so,
from use of phones while
just
driving.
reading this, it doesn't necessarily seem to exempt the police from this, so.
Okay,
drafting
good
it,
point.
I think you might want to. And is this suggesting that people can't use a phone even if it's hands-free? Unless they pull it over? That's how I read this. Is that what we're trying to say?
That's what it says.
Really? Okay. That almost seems more dangerous to me, forcing people to pull off every time the phone rings. To the side of the road, it seems a little strange to me.
I think a police officer would debate that with you. I think they'd say that even if it was hands-free, it's distracted driving.
But don't you think it's
I'm not
sort of
arguing
a-
about
Yeah,
this.
no, I know, I'm just saying, so the phone rings, everybody's gonna pull off to the side of the road and answer it, and
Well, you do
you're gonna
that,
have to set
don't
it, well, I don't pull off to the side of the road.
Of course. What, you?
I just answer the phone. Why, is it illegal to use hands-free?
Not hands-free. I don't
Right.
think it is. no.
Well, that's what I'm asking, so,
Yeah, I know. I'm
yeah, it
just-
just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. but-
It's gotten so argumentative, isn't it? I think it's as
I didn't think I was arguing.
In situations where employees drive and accept phone calls, state law as well as this policy requires the use of hands-free equipment.
Yeah.
That's in the policy.
Okay. But then it says, sorry, just.
Under no circumstances are employees allowed to place themselves at risk to
I move we
fulfill business
postpone action
needs.
until the next meeting.
Well, and I want to know that you,
We want
do you think
these.
that's enough time, though?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's fine.
It's like a
January
half
15th.
hour.
Okay.
I think that's fine, but just to comment on what's written here, it's.
Yes.
I understand that it says that, but then it goes on to say that if you're gonna use your cell phone, you have to pull over to the side of the road.
Okay,
Just seems odd.
okay. We'll take another stab at it. How about that?
We'll fix it.
Yeah. we'll fix it.
It wasn't-
Policies, believe me, they're not easy to write, and I think that any input you have, it doesn't necessarily have to be adopted next time. We can revisit these on an ongoing basis, and they'll get
Sure.
better as we go. What I want to make sure is if we have a policy that you feel is imperative that we have, that we pass it. But I think in terms of getting a good policy, there's nothing wrong with putting it on the agenda and giving me feedback each time. They're complicated.
So let me raise an issue that I think I raised the last time as it applies to workplace privacy.
Yes.
So, as I read this, it indicates that the town is considering adopting as its policy the right to, without limitation, inspect employees at work and anything under the sun. Go through their pocketbook, go in their pockets, that sort of thing.
Inspect employee?
That's what it says, the right to inspect employees' work areas and their persons.
I think it's in keeping with state law, but it's not something that we need to adopt as a policy. Certainly, it's up to this board.
I would not
We
be
don't want
in
to.
favor of such a thing. Seems a little,
We don't have these now, Brian.
yeah. All right, well, this is the draft, and it seems a little too intrusive and invasive to me. Some guy goes to work and the town can, go in his pockets and see what he has in his pockets. It seems a little odd to me.
Okay. As I said, we don't have to adopt these.
What's behind that? What's the logic of such a policy?
Can we take some time to look at this and discuss?
We can, but, well, I thought it would be helpful to kind of, but we can wait till next week, that's fine.
Next year.
Okay. It's fine.
Okay. Next year.
I just thought I would throw it out there as food for thought, so maybe it can be drafted in the meantime.
I'd like to read it so we could discuss it more.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, that section 1 seems, I agree, seems.
You know what I'm going to do?
broad.
I'm going to send these to you by email so that you'll have them. And you don't have to be looking for them in these
Okay.
papers. And that might be help to you before the next meeting.
Okay,
Would that be helpful? I find that helpful, to have things
I'm fine with this, but whatever.
in the
It's okay.
computer so that you can look at
Can scan it in.
it. Okay. The next is action on revisions to town policies, harassment and discrimination policy, and violence in the workplace policy, which we do have policies on, and these are suggested changes.
So the
But that
red,
too-
the red is a change?
Yes, and the
What are the
first one,
changes?
Brian, Mark, I'm not sure it has it in red. So those two I will send to you with the,
The zero tolerance policy on workplace violence has,
that has
Red,
red, right,
yeah.
but the first one doesn't, Mark.
what was the first one?
Harassment and discrimination.
Susan, is there any way that when we get these, we can, maybe the changes that are made can be like bold, so we
Yeah,
know?
no, we can do the tracking.
Yeah.
Do you like
just-
that?
Yeah, anything to be able to tell what's already in place
Sure.
and what's being added.
The red
because-
ink is fine with me.
Okay, somehow we will make sure that,
Okay.
but I can tell you, these aren't easy to adopt because they're complicated. So,
Yep.
as I said, I'm happy to send them and happy to put them on. And you don't necessarily have to adopt them, but if we can have discussion for a few minutes at the next meeting, that would be helpful.
Okay.
Okay. The next is appointments and reappointments to boards and commissions. In particular, the Chatham Health District, and there is a memo here from our Director of Health, Thad King. He's asking that your appointment be made at this meeting, because I'm the delegate that you've decided to have go to the Board of Health meetings, and I need to be reappointed, and it's a 3-year appointment. So it would be effective January 1 through 2014 through January 1, 2017. But at any time, you can rescind that, of course.
So you want to
Motion.
continue?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
So I would need to be appointed by the board. Is there a motion to that
Were you
effect?
starting to make one, Fred, or?
Yeah, I'll make it so moved.
Seconded by Brian? All in favor?
Aye.
Can we have a discussion?
No, Yes, of course you can. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any noes? Okay, motion passes. Thank you. And I believe we gave you a little information on that, a memo from that. Let's see, the next is the Ethics Commission, and I don't think there's any, are you ready for any appointments to that commission at this point? I did pass to you, I think I passed them to Carl and Kathy as our nominee members that make the most appointments and help with us getting appointments, and I don't have anything to bring to you tonight. So that will be on the next agenda as well. Okay. I will point out that you will not have a quorum because one person term is expiring this month. So that means starting January 1st, there'd only be, there's 3 people, but one person told me that he is sending in his resignation. That's Dr. Burke. He is unable to serve. He would like to, but he has other commitments and he can't. So I know that will be coming in. That leaves only 2, which is Mr. Law and Mr. J. Swanson. Terry Larson is up for reappointment, and there would be 2 other appointments. Okay, we'll have that on the agenda next time as well. Next is agreement between CRS Property LLC and the Town of Portland. And if I could, as an explanation within your packets, there is a fixed assessment agreement, but before you get to that, in green, there is a resolution authorizing the fixing of real property assessments. And if you bear with me, I'll read it into the record. Is that okay? Whereas the town has an existing policy to encourage growth and expansion of commercial and industrial parcels by allowing for the fixing of real property assessments, where a proposed development meets the requirements of Connecticut General Statute Section 12-65B, and whereas CRS Property LLC is proposing to develop 602 William Street Extension, map 21, lot 35, map 22, lot 2, referred to as the property, to create a retail building of approximately 6,720 square feet, and whereas it is in the town's best interest and is consistent with its economic development policies and its policy on fixing real property assessments policy, which is also in your packets, in particular to encourage this proposed development, and whereas CRS Property LLC, the owner of the property, has submitted an application to the town, which I have a copy of here as well, dated February 20th, 2013, to fix its real property assessment for the proposed development of the property in accordance with the Connecticut General Statutes and the town's policy. And whereas town staff has reviewed the application and confirmed that it appears to meet the eligibility requirements for a fixed tax assessment as set forth in the statutes and the town's policy, now therefore be it resolved, after due consideration and review, the town of Portland hereby approves the application and authorizes the first selectman to negotiate and execute a tax assessment fixing agreement, of which a draft is here, for the purpose of fixing the real property tax assessment on the property in accordance with the terms and conditions set forth in the statutes and the town policy. So that's the resolution for your consideration. I did speak with Carrie Olson, our town attorney, as far as the owner's rights to appeal any assessment. And those exist regardless. That's your right to appeal is your right to appeal, and that can't be taken away from you. In terms of the agreement, both parties will be signing an agreement, and in the agreement there is an appendix that identifies what the fair market value and the land value and the building value, what half of the building would be, and the adjusted value, and therefore the fixed assessment, which has all been calculated by the assessor's office. We also provided to you the commercial property record card and a calculation as to what was on the 2012 grand list, what is proposed to be on the 2013 grand list, which will be signed as of January 31, 2014, but it's as of October 1. And shows that with this particular fixed assessment, the estimated per year savings for the applicant would be $3,363.36 times 3 years, which is an estimate because the mill rate may change, of $10,090.08 over the course of 3 years. So the total adjusted value is listed there, which would, that's 70%, right? That's the 70%. And then the assessment that's fixed is listed there as well. So the incentive for the owners is that half of the improvement, which in this case is the building, would be not taxed for 3 years. And that's the incentive that's provided. But what you are passing as a resolution is actually the approval of the application and authorization for me to sign the agreement. And as of tonight, this is the agreement that would be signed.
I have 2 questions. One is, we would be authorizing you to sign an agreement, right? Does it say the agreement or an agreement? To negotiate a agreement, a tax assessment fixing agreement,
Which
not
is
necessarily this agreement.
not necessarily.
Okay. So,
But I wanted to give you what is likely,
yeah. no, I
because the
understand.
assessor has drafted this, and our town attorney has looked at this as well.
I
And we have
understand.
shared it with you.
Okay. No, I was just responding to Ben's concern.
I don't know that, and I'll repeat your concerns so you can correct me if necessary. If the agreement is signed as presented, and there is an appeal made for the assessment on the building, that means another agreement, if both parties agree, would have to then be put forward. Because
I don't think it could, though, the way this is written. The way this is written, it says that it can only be modified, or did I say it, by,
Right, the correction is, I would just ask that there's a caveat added that the number be what the number's going to be. As of now, Rich has
I
come up
can't
with
do
this
that.
no, we
I
can't do
can't
that,
do
but,
that.
I mean, my suggestion would be you not sign it until you're done. Either side.
Then it wouldn't occur likely for this next fiscal year.
Because Section 8 of the agreement says amendments and changes to terms, this agreement may not be modified or amended except by a writing signed by all parties, and all parties may not agree. So I wouldn't think that it would be signed until there was agreement on what the assessment was going to be, or the, right? Am I missing something?
what we typically do when there's new building is there's an assessment that is made, and then those parties are able to appeal that decision. But what we're trying to do is give a 50% of that building to not be taxed for 3 years, so we
It's
have to
really
have
not 50%
some-
of the building, it's 50% of the increase, isn't it? Of value?
Well, there was no
Well, there was no building
Well,
before.
of value, there was a building.
Was
It
there?
was torn down. It was,
Ah, okay, yeah.
yeah,
Yes,
there was a
it's
building.
50%, that's right, it's 50% of the value increase.
So, how long, you say what we would typically do, which is true, you would typically do that, but there is no typical behavior because this is the first time that we've invoked this.
No, all I was talking about is
Yeah.
the process for assessing properties.
So if there's a discrepancy and it has not yet been determined what the true value is, how long a process is that before any landowner or taxpayer could exercise their rights to appeal?
Well, once the assessment is made, there's a time period within the law that says you can appeal that decision to the Board of Assessment Appeals. The Board of Assessment Appeals has to meet within a given amount of time, and it's typically in the winter, before we
Yes.
set our budget.
January or February, isn't it?
Yes. And then they make a determination. That is appealable by the applicant, by the owner, to Superior Court.
Which could be
So
years.
that could be, yes.
So that's the risk that you'd have to take, I would think.
Yes.
I mean,
There is a revaluation in 2016, at which time all properties are revaluated. And at the revaluation, property can go up or property can go down. But at that point, this agreement will have reached the 3 years because it's October 1, 2013. So at that time, there'll be a revaluation, as there is on all properties.
My second question is that the resolution states that we authorize the first selectman to negotiate and execute a tax assessment fixing agreement. What negotiation is there?
It's this. I am not going to be negotiating the numbers, but rather the whereases and so forth. You can take the word negotiate out. I don't plan on doing any changes to this because our
Yeah.
attorney has reviewed it.
Yeah, I don't think we should negotiate.
You can take that out of the resolution, Mark. That would be accurate. It would be to execute, it'd be really to sign.
To execute the assessment agreement, yeah,
So the word negotiate can be stricken.
okay.
Because I am very careful to state that I have nothing to do with setting assessments.
Right,
It's not,
that's why,
I'm not allowed to.
that's why I thought it was.
I agree
that
with you.
was there.
That's good.
Yeah.
The attorney had put that in, maybe that's sort of boilerplate language for any kind of agreement, but I think that should be taken out. And you may be comfortable with only this one. I mean,
Well, if I may, so just going back to, so who's negotiating this? The Board of Selectmen?
it's not a negotiation.
There's no negotiation.
Well, there's sort of a negotiation, because the way that this is laid out is, it's a, for instance, what we're talking about here is a fixed assessment of 50% of the increased assessment for a 3-year period. But I think the way that the policy reads is that it's up to that. So if you wanted to, in a certain situation, you could say it was 2 years or 1 year or 3 days or whatever. So there's a negotiation taking place by someone somewhere.
Well, you already discussed this.
No, I understand, and I'm not trying to change that at all, I'm just saying in terms of the policy.
The policy is the policy. but
There's
this
some negotiation
resolution-
taking place, though.
Yes, but
in
this-
general.
But this resolution is for
Applies
this
to
specific.
this, I understand, and that,
But
I'm
you're
not.
correct.
I'm not going down that road, so.
That's the Board of Selectmen, it is not the First Selectman. If I'm recalling the policy, Brian, it is the Board of Selectmen that determines up to the 3 years, or up
Okay.
to.
So, fair enough, so then you're not.
That's what I'm
okay.
recalling. The policy's in front of you, and you can double check me there. But
So which one are we voting on? Is it the green one? Okay.
The green
So what's
one.
the white one then?
that's the agreement.
It's this, okay.
You're not voting on the agreement, you're authorizing me to sign the agreement.
Okay.
And as of today, that's the agreement. I'm not saying that the other party's gonna sign it. They may not.
Now, just,
But I didn't want to sign something without you seeing it.
okay, so we authorize you to sign it, you sign it. The property owners say, we don't agree with those numbers,
Which is their right.
so they don't sign it yet. So they go through whatever process they go through, and the town goes through whatever process they have. How much time do they have to sign this before it becomes null and void?
If they want it for July 1, 2014 taxable grand list,
Yeah.
it has to be before January 31st, 2014. If it's not signed by then, and the grand
It has
list,
to be by when?
the grand list will be set and signed by the assessor, January 31st, 2014.
Okay.
So if this particular assessment agreement is not made before then,
Before January 31st.
that's our target to get that
So
date.
if the property owners appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals,
Mhm.
they will not have a decision by January 31st in all likelihood.
So then it'll just go for the next 3 years, right?
Does it do that? Or does it end after, because it's a new building that's only able to be for 3 years? You know, if, I thought we had written it so that after the improvements were made, there was a window of 3 years. I just want to make sure that if that were to happen, that they would have a full 3 years.
Well, it's 3 years, I'm just saying it's not, so it
Is
started
it?
at 15.
Could that work? I don't know.
No, I would interpret.
I didn't read what the agreement says.
Well, that's more a policy question, Brian? To me, that would be more of a
I think
policy
that's
question.
more of a policy thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think the property owner has the right to appeal and do whatever they do, so to me,
Yes, they
if it
do.
takes place after January 31st.
It just
then the
wouldn't
way-
be for
then it-
July
Then it
1st.
doesn't for that year, and it's going to be the next 3 years, I would think.
Let's see.
Another way to look at it is if the assessment goes up, you're going to get a bigger break on your taxes. How come you didn't write that down, Jeff? Fixed
If the
assessment
cost-
period.
Yes, letter C, if the cost of improvements is not less than $25,000 and up to $499,999, then the assessment or increase in the assessment may be fixed. And it is the Board of Selectmen that is approving the written agreement for a period not greater than 3 years. Brian. Guidelines, the applicant shall submit an application and supporting documentation as required by the town. Town staff will review it. After its review, the Board of Selectmen shall approve or deny the application. So your action tonight is to approve or deny the application formally. Last time, I asked for
That's more than that.
approval, and I received consensus to move ahead. Everyone agreed, but we didn't take a formal vote.
But it's more than that. It authorizes you to execute the agreement,
Yes, so it's really doing
Okay.
both, Mark,
right?
yes. It's the application and the agreement, you're absolutely correct. That's why I have the agreement here, because you need to see what
Right.
will be signed. And if you don't
Fixed
agree,
assessment period shall cover no more than 3 years commencing October for taxes due July 1.
it's 2014.
And January 1.
Yes.
The number may work, I just just want to know if I did appeal it February 20th, the appeal date, and I win, that number can stay the same. I'm okay with that, but the fixed assessment number, I just want to make sure that if the land or building value is inaccurate in the assessment or appeals determines that and they adjust it, that it doesn't then null and void this. That's,
I don't know that I can do
I
that.
know. We got a little pickle.
Because
Good timing.
they're approved, we're signing this agreement unless both parties agree.
Why does it have to be for us by January 31st?
That's when they sign the grand list.
There's just no way to,
You gotta have the grand list to then have a budget and then be
Yeah,
able to set
true.
values and know what the
Well,
budget will be.
I have another question. First of all, the agreement has the signature page and the appendix. And I don't think that the signature page should be in the appendix. It
Okay.
should be in the document itself. Second of all, why do we even need the appendix? Why do we have to put numbers into the agreement? Because it's going to be whatever the final assessment turns out to be.
Not sure you wanna do that, do you?
Why? We don't,
You have to
we don't want to
have
get
it-
into negotiating this stuff. We don't
No,
want to
but
get in
you-
the middle of this. Whatever happens between the town and the property owner, I mean, we're dealing with the agreement, not the numbers, or we should be, as far as I'm concerned.
I mean, what we signed up for was, a tax break for the improvements, whatever
Right.
the improvements may be.
And it
or-
certainly has improved.
Yeah, and I
That's
would
great.
say that
Yes,
there's
I agree.
no need for us to get into that mix as well. I mean, that's not what, I don't want to argue about numbers, I just,
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I just don't, I mean, first of all, it's absolutely inappropriate to have did the lawyer draft this?
Yes.
Really? She should be
Yes.
ashamed of herself. Go ahead. Don't put the signature page on an appendix in the document. Am I right, Brian?
You're never going to worry about it.
It's full disclosure. It's trying to tell you what it is we're
I'm
doing.
not trying to hide anything,
No.
Susan,
Absolutely not. We want you to know what this is,
but
because it affects,
Well, it all comes down
affects
to,
the grand list, and that's why we wanted you to know. You have to know that, because it affects your revenue that the town receives.
but
I don't
there's a
have to know
there's a
this
wrinkle.
particular property. I mean, I don't care about that property any more than I do any other property on the grand list. You're looking at me like I'm crazy.
Yeah, well, because when you are making an agreement with any entity for tax relief, do you want to know what the amount you're relieving for that entity, or you don't care? I think you care.
Well, we have guidelines that govern the way we determine that.
No, do you
the
realize,
guidelines.
but when
Yeah,
you
but-
look at the value of the grand list and how revenue is raised, that determines your ability to raise money to have a budget. So if there were theoretically an application and you had no idea what it was, let's say it was in the next category, Mark, it was in the category of over millions of dollars. And based on whatever was put forward, X number of dollars is forgiven, that's X number of dollars that is not assessed.
Right.
So it's important, I think, for you not to make the
But there's
determination
a
of what it is,
policy
but to
in
know
here
what it
on
is.
fixing the real property assessments.
That's not my
Well,
point.
there's
That's not my
there's
point.
just a wrinkle here. So if, the way that this is written, and the town signs this, we're agreeing to the information that appears in Appendix A. And it would seem to me that if the applicant appeals that, that's going to be problematic if it goes beyond the time frame that's necessary, correct? So it doesn't, if that's the case, it just doesn't really make sense to include this information in the appendix. If this goes after January 31st, I mean, then I agree with Mark, it doesn't really matter what the number is, but it's not going to take effect in 2013. I think it's going to be 14, 15, 16, and they're going to have to,
Grand list.
correct, right?
Right.
So it just depends on what angle you're coming at this from.
Well,
but-
the applicant may want the relief for fiscal year 15. And what you're saying is they will not get relief for fiscal year 15, because likely, they
It-
won't.
it
If they're
appears
going to
that-
appeal it, they won't.
It appears to me that the applicant is in one way in the driver's seat because they can make that decision. However, then they run the risk of somebody not signing this or not agreeing up to that number, so.
Well, they also run the risk of losing or even having the value increased.
So what's going to, sure.
Yes.
So if Susan were to sign this now, and the applicant doesn't agree by a certain time frame, then it's just going to revert back to what
Null
it
and
is.
void.
Right.
Yeah. And then the process
And
goes
then it
forward.
starts over again.
No, the process goes forward for the appeal of the assessment. But as far
Correct.
as the incentive,
But then you're going to sign a new agreement potentially down the road based on that information, right?
if the selectmen agree that they want to wait a year to have an incentive for an entity that has paid the taxes for the first year, then are you going to rebate them?
Well, how else do you do it? You either rebate them or you push it forward 3 years.
If I may. It's the same as any new building, whether this was a tax break or not. Any new building that's put up right now is appealable February 20th. You were going to be approving a grand list based on the generic number of what that building was approved at. That number can then go up or down, like Mark mentioned. It's part of the process. I would just ask that we're very close to the number. It's not a huge discrepancy, but it's a discrepancy. I would just ask that you approve it based on the 50% number, which is very clear, and it would be retroactive, just like any other appeal. If my value has changed slightly, then the number changes slightly, and it's still in effect. Nothing ever changed. It's just like any other new building. This is just a wonderful program that you guys created, and I know we're splitting hairs here, but I would think we can still move forward with just not putting a number on it, and it's fine.
I have to put a number on it. We need to know what the number is. We need to know that.
But I
It's
thought-
part of the grand list. It's part of what this board, the town, even if they don't want to know, what the town is agreeing, because it is dollars and cents. And it's very common practice for a municipality to make sure when they're transacting business that they know what the dollars and cents are. To have it open-ended, to me, is not appropriate.
It's not really open-ended when it's 50% of whatever is dictated.
No, it's open-ended because, I'm sorry?
The way that I look at it is,
I don't know what you're saying, Carl, I'm sorry, I
It
can't
is
hear you.
open-ended. I agree with you. It is.
What is open-ended?
Like you're saying. Is there some way of doing it where you set the fee with a caveat that in the first 6 months? we
Well,
can
what it
adjust?
says is
I'd like to
that
see a number there and
there's-
then adjust.
you can amend the terms. I mean, you're talking about,
Because the idea of the whole program is to bring in, stimulate new growth and buildings and so forth. So it would seem to me that they would want their money your first year, which is most important.
which is the incentive.
So that's the incentive of growing. So is there some way where we can put it in here, and then if there is a discrepancy or from the number that we assign now, that we can adjust from there?
Then you would have, both parties would have to agree to modify
Right,
or amend
right,
in writing, signed by both parties.
right.
And I would bring it back to you and say that the assessment is now reduced, or the assessment by the Board of Assessment Appeals stayed the same, or it went up.
Right.
If it goes to court, that means it goes to the many months ahead. I don't know how many months. It could be up to a year or two.
May I ask you a question? If there were no such program, and this program didn't exist, and somebody improved a property, and a value was assigned to the property by the
Mhm.
town assessor,
Mhm.
and it went onto the grand list,
Which we do all the time.
okay. And then the property owner said, gee, I don't think that is an appropriate assessment.
Mhm.
I think that's not enough. I think it's worth more than that. or less. And they appeal to the Board of Assessment Appeals. And they reach a decision, and the value changes in either direction. What happens then to your grand list?
Well, then adjustments would be made by the court.
So why would this be by the court?
If it goes to court, if it goes to the Board of Assessment Appeals,
Yeah,
and that decision is made, then adjustments are made to the grand list. You know how I always tell you what the grand list is, and that's how we set our mill rate?
yes.
That is adjusted by the Board of Assessment Appeals.
So why is this any different? Why-
It isn't any different, other than we're trying to set an agreement before we sign the grand list. And if there's a change, you can change the numbers in the
No, but you
agreement.
said it would be open-ended, and we don't know. But what I'm suggesting is it wouldn't be any different if there was no such program. The grand
But the-
list would still be subject to change.
Okay. What we're trying to set is an agreement, and when you have an agreement, it can be changed, but you have to start somewhere, and we'll,
I'm fine. If
You have to
this is a
start
starting
somewhere.
point and there is a change and you guys are authorizing her to okay it, then it's up to you.
I will bring,
Sorry to complicate
I
this.
will bring any changes back to the board, because, and let's say I'm not sitting in the seat. You don't want any first selectman, okay, making an agreement to reduce taxes without the approval of this full board. And that's what we are doing here. You are forgiving taxes, which is a very serious matter for the selectmen to take up. When you're forgiving taxes, this board has to approve that. And you need to know what that number is. That's why this agreement is brought to you. Now, if this agreement is signed based on what the assessor says the value is, as of the date he signs the list, that's what's in the agreement. If it's appealed and it changes, both parties can say they want to make a change to this agreement. But I will not make that change without the approval of this board, because it is affecting the amount of taxes, whether it's up or down.
I don't think you're
It's
allowed to
likely to
change
be
it.
down.
It seems to me that
according
there
to
are two
this.
options available.
Why not, Mark?
Because,
Didn't it say both parties?
I don't remember what it said, but I'll,
It's right here. Amendments, changes to terms.
And I'm fine with everything you just said, Sue, and as long as you're not gonna revoke, and I'm okay, say they do lower it or raise it or whatever, and you guys say, no, we're happy with the number we had, we don't want, as long as you're not gonna revoke it. then
But see, this
that's
board,
fine.
this board is the only entity that can forgive taxes.
The board would have that right.
Yeah.
Right. So to me, there's two options. One, you can do what Mark's saying, and we agree as a policy that we're going to reduce this 50% for 3 years, whatever the value is. So you play this out, and just as Mark suggested, that's the way that it's done. The other alternative, as I see it, is that if this isn't signed now, and the applicant goes through their process and they determine what the value is, whenever the applicant and the town agree to whatever that is, that's when they agree to their terms. So it's not going to be 2013. In 2013, they're going to pay 100% of whatever the assessed value is.
Right.
If they apply for it in 2014, then if the board agrees that it's going to go for 3 years, then it's going to be those 3 years forward.
Let me
It's-
ask you this question.
It's interpreted one way or the other.
Let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Is that in the spirit of the policy, which is to provide an incentive to the new business? Is that the spirit, that they pay full taxes and then you don't give them a
It's
break
their
until a year
choice.
later? But is that in the spirit of how you want to implement this policy?
It wasn't
That's
the
up to this
point,
board.
yeah.
Well, they're getting the benefit, they're just choosing when they're getting it, whether they're going to take it in 2013 based on what the value of it is, or if they're going to do it in 3 years. And if the applicant decides that they don't want to take it this year, they want to pay, if they just choose, they want to pay 100% of it this year, and take their appeal and do whatever they want to do, then that's up to them, and then it's up to the board going forward, whether they want to agree to 50% over 3 years or not.
I don't think that's the spirit of the policy. I understand what
I
you're
don't
saying.
see how
I don't
else
think
you
it's the spirit of
interpret
the
this.
policy.
And we prefer
It's not the
to move
spirit of the
forward this year,
policy.
too. I agree. We prefer
They
to
put a
have
lot of
something-
money out. Any business puts a lot of money out in the first year.
Just to give you guys a difference.
Well, then I think what-
$5,000 difference where I think the value is.
All right, well, then it's kind of nonsense that we're talking about.
A drama than it's worth. But I just wanted to, if there was an easy way to have, still giving me the appeal rights, and there was an easy way to adjust it, but if there is not an easy way to adjust it, so be it. Then I have.
It should be referenced.
Well, the easy way then is not to
I'll
include
talk
the
to her
appendix,
about
because
it.
you're including specific numbers, so it's just your
What
policy.
she wanted to do is
Right.
emphasize that this is part of
The whole point of
the agreement.
Then you should
doing it
agree
this way-
to what Mark is saying,
Yeah, that's
and the
what,
number becomes what it
I will talk
becomes.
to her about
I
it.
mean, when we
know.
voted for this to begin with, we said that we would take each case individually as they came along. So, to say that something worth, $5 million comes along down the road, that's something that we would have to look at that time, and it would be different. In this situation, I feel like we're pretty close to, knowing, as you said, we're not very far off. I don't know what, I understand, forgiving taxes of any kind is a very serious job of ours, but as you said, Susan, like, the whole point of this is to encourage small business growth and to reward people for, taking a proactive.
Right,
role.
for investing in our town.
So, I mean, we should do whatever we can to honor the agreement that we voted for last year, I feel like.
So if that's the case, then Susan, I guess I don't understand, I understand your point, but to me, if you're voting in the spirit of the policy, then we should not include this appendix. The applicant should have the right to appeal, and whatever that number turns out to be, turns out to be.
You need to have, for not just this board, but you need for every person that belongs to this town, and owns property and pays taxes in this town, what the forgiving amount is for a given entity.
Well, the
I just think
the overall
appropriate.
policy is 50% of the increased value, correct?
No, it's set by this board. You could determine, it wouldn't
So
be
you want
up
it to
to
be
that
less.
amount. Yes, and I
Right.
think it only is the appropriate transparent action for this board to state in the agreement what that amount is. To not state it is not transparent to all the other businesses and all the other people that live in the town. I don't think
Well,
there's a problem
that would be the
with that
third
law.
option then you sign this as is, the applicant either signs it or not, and then if they don't and they appeal, then, we go forward and deal with it next year.
And
But I think what's gonna happen there is it's not gonna be retroactive, because I don't know how you do that, if they sign it after the appeal and however many years that takes.
You would treat it the same way you would treat any
Yeah.
appeal of any property.
yeah, and I will bring, but for the spirit of
But that
transparency.
doesn't take into consideration when this goes into effect.
But for the spirit of transparency, I would bring any changes back to this board and make it public, so that you know and everyone knows that the forgiveness of those taxes is now going to be $50 more, $25 less, the same, whatever it might be. I just think if you're doing this, you need to tell people what you're doing. I think it's a good thing. And I compliment you, Ben, for the improvement that was made at 750 Portland Cobalt Road, formerly 602 William Street Extension. I mean, it's a wonderful improvement. It's a wonderful retail establishment. It's a wonderful business, and I appreciate the work that you've done. It wasn't easy to do, and it was a beautiful job.
So
And
just
so we're trying to give you, and I fully support the break up to the limit that the policy allows. But this board could have determined that they wanted it to be less than the 50%.
Correct. And if, for example, the appeal went down for the value of the structure, it's less of a break. I get
Yes.
less.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
So.
Pay more
I'm not
taxes,
trying
you'll get a
to
bigger
raise,
break.
To be honest with you guys, I'm not gonna come in and have a raise, so if anything, your break would go down, the break you're offering, and I appreciate it.
But your overall taxes go down.
But the break, what we're reflecting tonight is the break.
Right, but the
Obviously,
grand list would go down.
Just like any other. thing,
Yes.
right?
It all
Any other
goes
thing.
down.
Yes, and that's the way it's supposed to happen in terms of the process. Assessment is made. In fact, the assessor did have an initial number, and there was discussion with the applicant, and the initial number was reduced based on the information provided. As of 4:30 this afternoon, close of business, this was the number that the assessor is comfortable with putting forward. Now, this is an appealable number, as any assessment would be, and we will proceed in accordance with the law in that regard. But in the spirit of trying to get the incentive for the business for the fiscal year coming July 1, 2014 through June 30, 2015, I hope that we can agree to sign this. If there's changes in the assessment, I can bring it back to this board for their consideration of changes to the terms.
Your last comments reminded me of that old story of the guy who wanted his cake and wanted to eat it too. And I always wondered, if he had the cake, why the hell he wouldn't want to eat it?
Thanks, Mark.
Yeah.
I was just trying to get the numbers to reflect the property, in my opinion, more accurately. And yes, it would have lowered the break you were giving me, but having said that, I'll take a bigger break. Leave it alone. You know, and then in 3 years, I get to go through the reval and it's fine.
He's realizing the trepidation, the danger of what he's playing in here.
I don't like the cards up there now. I should have listened to Carl about 20 minutes ago.
So you're comfortable with it as it is?
As long as, if I did appeal it, I don't even care if you didn't change the number, if we came back in front of it and they left it alone and said, hey, we gave you a good deal, don't change. I just would want the process to be the process, and if the assessment then.
You have to.
Right.
Yes, you're
And
right.
it's like, you know what, he was a little bit off, we're not far off, guys. It's really that, maybe I shouldn't even come here. The numbers aren't that far off, the assessment and I are, it's been great to deal with. I think you guys did, anybody that didn't put on higher seems pretty good. So it's probably not worth splitting hairs. I just wouldn't want this revoked. If I did get the assessment changed, I would just want to know that you just don't change your number. I'm fine with that. If the assessment went down a little bit, or.
Well,
If the
it's in the
board votes for
agreement.
this and you sign it, it is what it is, because it's
Correct.
spelled out. Right.
But does that then stop you from still having the right to appeal?
You can appeal, but it's not going to affect this agreement unless you came back to the board and the board agreed to do something different.
Okay.
I think that's the understanding, right?
And you're asking to, in the green sheet here, First Selectman to execute a tax assessment fixing agreement for the purpose of fixing, and we're taking out negotiate and. And I will also speak with Carrie Olson about the signature page and where that should be appropriately placed. Because Appendix A is referred within the body, it's number 4. So Appendix A is part of the agreement, but the signing page, I will.
Section 2 is also incomplete.
Yes, because the date of approval is tonight, we hope.
Well, I thought that was the date of the review. Oh, no, I apologize. You're right.
So moved.
Second?
Who made the motion?
I did.
Brian did.
Okay, and you made, I'm sorry.
Brian made the motion and Fred seconded it, but
Mark?
I hate to be, I know you're going to talk to Carrie, but the way that, I mean, we're voting on this document and this,
You want the signature page
on the
on the document
agreement.
and the appendix as an appendix?
As an appendix.
Okay. That's the way it will be.
So moved.
Second.
I agree
Further
with you,
discussion?
for what it's worth, Mark.
I'd just like to say that, I think this is good, the whole point, when, I think it was unanimous when the board voted for this, last year, and, we've only seen one, I mean, you're the first person to, apply for this, and I just would like to encourage other, residents and businesses to make improvements, because this is important. It's
program.
important for
Yes.
the town to improve.
I agree. 100%. I want to thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for investing again in our town. Appreciate it very much. And
More importantly, you guys, by creating that, really helps a lot. If you do remove it, another thing we may want to add is getting rid of existing non-conforming, maybe waive the building permit fees, something like that. And you can get rid of the existing non-conforming structures on 66. Just a simple thing like that.
the building fee?
Yeah, they're, $1,400, $2,000 just for the building permit. But if you say, hey, you get rid of the non-conformity and we make it more conforming.
This is a story about cake.
But that's a different.
Story
It's
about
another,
cake.
it's another,
Yeah.
another thought.
I do appreciate you guys doing that, and I think it's a wonderful program. Hopefully, I'm gonna try to do more, so I appreciate it. So,
Very
sorry I
good.
wasted your time.
No, you didn't waste it. It was a valuable
interesting
Don't lie,
discussion.
don't lie to him.
Did we vote?
No, I
He
resent
knows I'm
that.
kidding,
I
it's
resent that
okay.
because I don't lie, it's the truth. I think this was a good discussion. Tell me I was lying. Brian.
Brian said you were lying.
Yeah, I think this is a valuable,
It really
No,
applies
you're
to
talking to me.
them, though.
No.
Yeah. You were kind of playing them
He
along.
didn't mean to be offensive.
Yeah, before we
He said
call
he was
it,
sorry for
I
wasting
need
your
a
time.
vote.
before we call out
Yes.
this one, yeah, in terms of what Ben said, I think too, this is, as far as economic development, I think most of us have expressed an interest in doing something to try to help economic development. Certainly is one step, but I think there are other things we should be looking at, and other policies that we can take a look at and maybe to see if they could be changed to make the town more, more attractive to development, proper development. So, just to speak to your point on 66.
And I could add, Fred, if anyone had any questions about this, they certainly should call either my office or the assessor's office to get more information, because I think it is a good program, and it does provide some of that necessary incentive for those businesses that are willing to further invest in our town.
And just on a side note, I think that was one of the main reasons to help Chris Cody stay in town. There wasn't very many buildings available besides we needed.
That's right.
We could have lost it very quickly.
That's right.
It's not good to have a listing on Main Street, but the bottom line is he's moving, and we're lucky to retain him.
Very happy
This
to
was
stay
one of the
with
reasons, so
Portland.
you guys are part of this, so it's great.
And I encourage everyone to go visit Chris Cody Golf at 750 Portland Cobalt Road. It's a beautiful shop.
Even if you don't golf, you could buy a shirt.
Yes.
Golf shirt.
I know a lot of golfers. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you all.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Ben, very much. The next item is under new business, and Fred Nouse had asked me to put on here a 2014 legislative agenda, and in particular, he wanted to point out some matters associated with healthcare. So I'll turn it over to Fred.
I promise not to take as much time as we spent on the last item. Thank you, Sue. Regarding the legislative agenda, state session, the session in Connecticut starts in February, the first week. And the reason why I brought this, asked this item to be brought up is to see if we were interested in, as a board, coming up with specific agenda items we could then create really an agenda for our legislators, both Representative Carpino and our Senator Linares. And these could include suggestions that the board have in terms of priorities or ideas that they could then try to advance in the state legislature. And as I thought about it, there were a couple of tools, and I think we're not probably all familiar with some of them. One tool that exists is a department, an OLR, Office of Legislative Research. And I was looking today on the internet, and there was a list of all of the reports that have been done. And a lot of them touch on issues of the town, some issues that we've been dealing with. There was a report on blight, and they're coming back with some legislation on blight ordinances, and we just went through this. Any legislator...
What kind of legislation on blight ordinances?
What their report did was look at all 30 towns in the state who have different ordinances, and then compared one to the other, and the intent was if they were going to come back with specific legislation to try to make some appropriate changes, or changes they thought would be appropriate.
I'll have to stop, leave people alone.
Well, you have a chance to go up and testify if they do. But that was one example of a report that they did, and I don't know, there probably were 40 or 50 reports. The point being, a legislator can request a report to be done. So if we have a specific idea or thought, then that can be shared with either of our representatives, and then they can go forward with that request. One of the things that I was thinking about was our last meeting when we had people come in from the Glastonbury-Portland line who had a problem with a road.
Right.
And as I thought about it, I said, okay, this is a problem that is there, and it's a problem we have to really think about, because it's a safety problem. You're talking about access to that house. You're talking about people who have fire apparatus being able to get there, police apparatus, kids going to school. So we just can't, I think, forget about that. We have to try to do something. One thing we might want to do with our legislators is to give them the responsibility of doing a little research. It's a shared situation. Glastonbury has a responsibility, Portland has a responsibility. We have our two legislators from Portland, and we have several from Glastonbury. If they can start cooperating, getting together, and seeing what might be done in terms of getting some funding, perhaps, to correct that drainage program, that might be a good use of their time and their effort. And that would be a case, too, where an OLR report might help, because then somebody could do the research. It doesn't cost us anything. They could do the research to see if there have been any precedents anywhere else in the state where similar kinds of situations occurred. So that really was the genesis of why I thought it was worth at least talking about it if the board wanted to go forward. If they don't, the board doesn't. That's the nature of the beast.
Fred, is there a standing committee to do that, legislative research?
It's a separate branch of state government, and it's right in the LOB building.
Okay.
It's just like Office of Fiscal Analysis, their staff. OLR has, I don't know, a dozen, 15 people probably, anyway.
And who decides what they'll research?
The way it's been done traditionally is, if you're a legislator, you call up and request that to be done.
And they'll do it?
And they'll do it.
Really? It's a
Unless
great
it's
idea.
changed dramatically.
It is.
It's a great idea, particularly in regards to that issue that you described.
Right.
Do you want to put together a committee to brainstorm and make recommendations?
In terms of?
Recommendations to our senator, or local, ours, legislator and senator, and neighboring towns that we may have to interact with on issues like that.
Yeah, if there's somebody else on the board that's interested.
Yeah, I would.
I'm interested, yeah.
Well, as it
Anybody
relates to
else?
that issue, we should just ask them to do it.
Pardon?
As it relates to Triton Street, we should just ask
Yeah,
them to do it.
I agree.
Yeah.
We should
Yeah.
just ask
Yeah,
them
to do that. Yeah, we can do that, yeah.
In fact,
So we have Fred Nouse, Mark Finkelstein, and Ryan Curley. Correct?
mhm.
Fred, we always seem to get on these together.
Is there a motion to form this subcommittee?
So,
Is there a second?
Do we need it? Do we need a motion?
Yes, I think we should. It's a formal committee, and you'll have agendas and minutes so that people will know that you're doing this. And maybe you'll meet once, and that's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah,
But
I don't
think it's an
foresee this as
important
taking a whole lot of
action.
our
No.
time at this point. I think it's just if we have some issues that we want to deal
If
with.
you'd
What
like
about
to
the
meet on the
speeding on Main
15th,
Street?
before
Could-
the next meeting, I
something
can
to-
arrange
Yeah.
that and take care of that for you.
Speeding on 66, the discussion about 66 and the danger, that's another
Yeah.
possibility
Yes.
for a report.
Yes.
If there's a report done and it shows that 66 is, we know it's dangerous, but as compared to other limited access highways, how does it rank? Does it rank?
Why is it so dangerous? I mean, people have been dying out on the ledges for years.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know why, though. Yeah.
Is it design? It might be part of it, I don't know. But anyway, that could be another issue, because
Yeah.
if you come back and say, hey, this Route 66 from Portland, East Hampton, up to Hebron is, per mile is causing an extraordinary number of accidents and deaths, I think there's more of a chance to get something done in terms of getting the state involved.
I think it would be interesting also to ask the media representatives if they would solicit comments for us, perhaps through your office, Susan, is that the
Sure,
best
that'd be
way?
absolutely good.
Because I'm sure other people have things to
Matters,
consider that
things for the
that we
agenda.
haven't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Yeah, well,
It's a good idea.
So I'll make your first meeting January 15.
Okay,
What time would you like that? We have a regularly scheduled meeting at 7:30.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock?
What's the date, which date?
15 of January. We do not meet January 1. Sorry, Brian.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Gives you enough time, too, to have some input perhaps from the public. And I'll share that with Fred, since he seems to be the one that's most familiar. I think that's an excellent idea. It's not something the selectmen have done in the past, and I think that's
And that'll be for
valuable.
just Tryon Street or for just in general?
No, we're coming up with ideas for,
That's just one
That
item.
one's
we're
already done.
starting with Tryon Street. We're starting with Tryon Street, but we want to generate other ideas.
First
And
thing, Tryon.
if we can get somebody else to do research for us. I wish I knew that. I would have had them do the research we did on Blight.
We did use some of their research. I did review an OLR report that had been done. It wasn't done specifically for the town of Portland, but
On
there
Blight.
is already OLR reports on blight, yes. It may have been included in some of that material you gave to me from years ago.
I don't think so. What
Yeah,
we
from
had was the
Blight.
blight ordinance from every town
Every
that
town.
had one.
Right. But I'm pretty sure, Fred, there is a report. I'm not certain of the questions that they're answering, but I thought I saw them. Do
Now,
you know?
there's another, the one that's there on the, I'll give you the link, I'll just forward you the link. And
Okay.
It gives all of the reports, and that was the one that was in there, and I think that one was done recently, it may have been updated for one.
Okay, because I did know there was one. It's a valuable resource.
What was Bob Cleaner's old position? Ombudsman to property owner ombudsman or something?
For OLR.
No, I don't think it was for them. It was a separate office.
We really would have to get Glastonbury's reps.
He got me all
involved
the
on this.
blight ordinances from
Yeah, I mean,
every
it's their
town
province.
in the state.
It's in their,
There was-
as I understand it.
The
There
road.
was one.
The road where there has to be.
It was property owners.
I will give you a little update, and Chief Shea said no matter the water level, he has the ability to get into those
I'm sure they
houses
do.
for
Which
safety.
houses?
The
Oh,
ones that would be on the other
Tryon.
side of the flooded road on Tryon Street.
Right.
So it's not, and he is making up a list of services that he provides to them as well as to everyone else. But I'll be getting that from him soon. Because they are in our town, we have to provide them services, and I want to be certain that they're getting the services that they are entitled to.
That they're paying for.
And they're paying for it, that's right. Anything else on that topic?
Susan, there was a motion made and seconded, there was no vote.
Oh, thank you. The motion was made for the committee, and we have the members. Do you have that, Sharon?
Yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Sharon.
What do we
The ne-
call the committee? Legislative committee?
I'm calling
Yeah,
it
legislative
2014,
That's broad enough.
what do you want to call it?
Legislative.
Committee.
Oh,
That's broad enough. We don't-
thank you.
We don't have
Can
to
make
be
it four.
Makes me feel important.
Three's a good one.
Well, you are important. The next item is amendment to the non-union pay plan for 2013-14 because the minimum wage is increasing January 1, 2014.
We have minimum wage employees?
Under Parks and Rec Youth Services, Counselor 1?
Yeah.
Yes, that is a minimum wage, and then there's still the graduated increases that are there. It's on
So are we rippling
page-
others up?
I think they all, on that scale, have been changed. That, but not the others. Only that one line, which has an asterisk.
Do we have, what was it before? So everything goes up whatever?
Well, it was the previous minimum wage, which I think I just read that.
So every one of those steps goes up, what, 45 cents? Is what happens?
Well, the difference, yeah, yes. I don't know if it's exactly that, but it's, yes, it would be. Wait a minute. It was, what was the previous number? Ryan, didn't I just read that?
It was 8.25.
8.25.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
Do we have to give everyone an increase, just out of curiosity? I mean, I understand, minimum wage is minimum wage, but why does that affect every single step?
That's your decision tonight. This is a proposal, it's your decision. We don't have to do anything but what you tell us, other than what the state law says, which is the minimum wage of $8.70.
Because this doesn't affect anything currently, and wouldn't affect anything until, what,
The
next
summer.
summer, right? And then we still have.
So
No,
what
there
is-
may,
what is-
no, there, I believe, Ryan, let me correct that. There are before and after school care. It's only after school now. So some of those counselors would get minimum wage. They'd be a counselor one.
Yeah, so, yeah.
So they are using it now.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, the proposal is we're increasing the minimum wage for, just the minimum wage for that group, right? Or is the proposal that it's increasing for everyone across the board?
No, it's only that asterisk
Right.
So-
line.
Are you,
So
Yeah.
do we have what
it's
the?
not carried out to the steps?
Yeah, do we have
It
a?
is.
Is it carried out through, if I was a counselor too, making 1036, was I making, 9, what?
No, no, no.
95 before, or
No,
whatever it is?
it's only the counselor one line.
Right, okay. So moved.
Yeah.
It's that line across. Is there a second? Motion was made by Brian,
I'll second it.
seconded by Mark. Again, it's for transparency and reminding that the minimum wage law has changed. We bring this to you because it's required that we pay from the pay plan.
And you're positive it's only counselor one? Every other one stays the same?
That's what they told me. I did not type this myself.
Okay.
But what I asked was, what's changed? And I was told that one line only.
The whole line across.
Yes.
Council.
What's the highway, the grounds maintenance crew leader, 299, is that in addition to,
That's Carl Johnson's position for supervision of our employees. He is paid
$2.99?
well, I think at this point he's $3.40. Because he's been doing that for more than 5 years.
On top of his regular rate of pay?
From the Board of Education. That's been the case since before I was first selected. When they consolidated parks,
Yeah.
grounds, Mark,
Yeah.
they gave a stipend in addition to the wage for that position to be the supervisor of the union members.
Okay.
Under,
I don't understand that, really. Why wouldn't it just be built into the base pay.
I believe it was, at the time, it was a sharing of
It was.
the responsibilities. So the town has 3 positions for grounds maintenance, and the Board of Education has 1 employee, but he provides supervision for our employees, so this increase was part of
Excuse me.
it. So we pay for part of that.
I understand. It says, no,
That's about 15 years ago.
I never noticed it before.
Under miscellaneous payments, election workers.
Yes. Wait a minute, let me turn to that page.
They're subject to that also, aren't they?
Yes, thank you. So that would be 8.
Oh, we adopted the plan, so.
But
that's
we need to
included.
change that. We need, he's correct. Thank you.
What do clerks for the boards get?
Well, it's right here. Board clerk, $17.43 an hour.
Susan,
Yes.
under the hourly payments, each individual step goes up approximately about the same amount, about 31 cents each step. Now, that includes, if what we're saying is correct, that it only includes Counselor 1, then shouldn't each step be a little different after Counselor 1? I don't know, I just, for the sake of transparency, I would like to see what the rest of them, I mean, are we gonna vote for I'm not sure if this is just Counselor 1 or if it's all the levels.
I can call the finance director and ask him if he'd like. That's what I was told, that they only changed that line, Ryan.
Yeah.
I don't have it right here with me, the
No, I
old
know.
Well, if you
plan.
find otherwise, we can change the rule.
You can change it again. You can change it as many times as you want. So, but tell me again what your concern is, Ryan.
My concern is that every counselor level got a 45 cent an hour raise. I mean, that's,
That it's rippled throughout.
that
the
is
whole
rippled through.
program.
And it
They
looks
told-
like
I
it
asked
very
that
well could be.
specifically, and I was told no, but I will verify that.
Call the question.
Okay. All in favor?
Please.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
I'll abstain on this thing.
Okay. Motion carries. The next item is a refund of excess payments.
Move that Toyota Motor Credit be refunded $128.75.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Did Brian second?
Yes.
Motion carries. Status and committee reports. I do not have anything under that. Public comment? Informal discussion.
I have something.
Yes.
I know we had a fire on Route 17 a couple weeks back, and I believe the property was one that has been on our blight list for
Yes.
quite some time.
Yes.
And
Well, it's there, and it also was on the health department attention as well. Health department.
and I would like, if we can have Lincoln come in and talk to us about the status, because the whole point of our blight committee and our ordinance was to prevent these things from happening. And luckily, no one was injured. But, we have other blighted properties, and if a fire were to break out, and it was something that we could have done more to prevent these properties from getting into the shape that they're in.
Wasn't it reported that that fire was set or believed to be set? I don't think it's got anything to do at all with blight.
Well,
Somebody
it
set
wouldn't
the
have
fire.
happened, I think, if the property was well-maintained. It wouldn't have attracted.
Nobody would have said it?
I don't think so. I would say that
You know who said it?
I don't know, I heard it was Carl, but don't tell anyone. No, I just think that if I were an arson or whatever, I was gonna set a fire, I would go to the most dilapidated building around. So I do think in some ways it is a blight issue, because people treat abandoned properties a lot differently than they treat, regular residential, good upkeeping properties. So I would like more things done about this to prevent, future fires or what have you.
Well, what's really more important also, though, with that is that that it laid out on our aquifer protection zone, that so if there was anything bad,
The
on
state
that
was
property,
notified and testing
yeah,
was performed.
that the water didn't leach down some stuff that toward the water.
It was before the well was not operational, and
Yeah.
the water has been tested previous to using it again. We're not using the water until it passes the test.
Ryan, what do you want Lincoln to do?
I just want, he comes in every once in a while and tells us about the status of the blighted properties, and I can't remember the last time he came in. So I just would like him to come in and.
Just to give an update.
Yeah, give us an update, yep, that's all.
Sure. That's good. Any other informal discussion matters tonight? I have no updates on the two follow-up matters. I had written a letter to the Mongonk Meadows land owner, and he is not interested, I believe, in the price that you had offered. Or at least not at this point. If I hear anything, I will let you know. And the drainage matter is a matter of putting dollars into the correction of that particular drainage matter. That is a budgetary matter.
Do we need an executive session?
Yes, I have some information to share with you.
I move that we
Thank you, Mark.
go into executive session for the purpose of discussing land acquisition.
And Dave Kuzminski will be joining us because we had a meeting.
Who made it first? Who made it?
Mark?
Who was second?
Nobody.
Second.
Second by Ryan. And we'll take a few minutes break to clear the room.
I ate before the meeting this time, so don't worry.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Go.